You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest men in Roman history, rose to prominence not only for his immense fortune but also for his shrewd political maneuvering, ambition and ruthless opportunism. Born around 115 BC into a wealthy patrician family, Crassus experienced both privilege and peril early in life. His father, Publius Licinius Crassus, had been a respected consul and censor. But during the chaos of the Marian Sinan regime in Rome, political purges forced young Crassus into hiding. His survival during this turbulent time was marked by resourcefulness. He concealed himself in a cave for months and even fled to Spain for refuge. There, he rebuilt his fortunes and gathered military experience before returning to Rome after Sulla's victory in the civil wars. This early brush with political danger forged in Crassus a determination never to be powerless again, and it instilled in him an enduring hunger for both wealth and influence. Upon his return, Crassus capitalized on the proscriptions, Sulla's legalized confiscations and executions, to purchase the properties of condemned men at bargain prices. He expanded his fortune with an infamous real estate enterprise, one that relied in part on a private firefighting brigade. Fires were common in Rome's densely packed, flammable neighborhoods, and Crassus would often arrive at a burning building with his men, offering to buy it for a pittance before his team would begin extinguishing the flames. His reputation for avarice grew alongside his fortune, but his wealth also allowed him to fund political campaigns and cultivate allies. Crassus was not simply a profiteer. He was a political architect who understood that in the late Republic, money was a weapon as powerful as the sword. Yet for all his wealth, Crassus sought the one thing money could not directly buy: military glory. While his political rise continued in Rome, another opportunity for distinction appeared in 73 BC, when the most famous slave revolt in Roman history erupted under the leadership of Spartacus. The Senate, alarmed by the repeated failures of other commanders, entrusted Crassus with supreme command against the rebels. Determined to restore Roman pride, Crassus imposed harsh discipline on his troops, even reviving the ancient and brutal practice of decimation, executing every 10th man in units that showed cowardice. His strict methods turned the tide. In 71 BC, Crassus cornered Spartacus in southern Italy, defeating the slave army in a bloody battle. The victory cemented his reputation as a capable, if ruthless, commander, though Pompey the Great, returning from campaigns in Spain, managed to claim part of the credit after mopping up fleeing rebels. This rivalry between Crassus and Pompey would simmer for years, each man wary of the other's ambitions. Crassus, however, recognized the value of political alliances. Along with Pompey and the rising star Julius Caesar, he formed the so-called First Triumvirate around 60 BC. A private agreement to dominate Roman politics. In this alliance, Crassus's role was clear. He provided the financial muscle, Pompey brought military prestige, and Caesar offered unmatched political charisma. For several years, the pact worked to their mutual benefit, but Crassus's envy of Pompey's eastern conquests gnawed at him. Pompey's victories against Mithridates and his reorganization of the East had brought him immense fame. Crassus wanted a similar legacy, and his eyes turned toward the Parthian Empire, Rome's powerful eastern rival. The Parthians, heirs to Persian traditions and masters of mounted warfare, controlled vast territories stretching from Mesopotamia into Iran. Rome and Parthia had maintained an uneasy balance of power, but Crassus believed that conquering them would be relatively easy and enormously rewarding. In 55 BC, serving as consul once again, he secured command of a campaign against Parthia. This was not a defensive war, but an aggressive, self-serving enterprise. Crassus sought wealth, glory, and a legacy to rival Alexander the Great's eastern exploits. Many in the Senate opposed the war, seeing it as unnecessary and dangerous, but Crassus pressed ahead, assembling a massive army of 7 legions, supported by cavalry and auxiliaries. In 53 BC, Crassus crossed the Euphrates, guided by an Armenian ally, King Artavasdes II, who advised him to advance through Armenia's mountainous terrain, where Parthian cavalry would be less effective. Crassus, however, ignored this advice and instead chose the direct route across the flat plains of Mesopotamia, open country that favoured Parthia's elite horse archers and heavily armoured cataphracts. This strategic error would prove fatal. The Parthian general Surena, a brilliant tactician, lured Crassus deeper into hostile territory. Outside the town of Carrhae, in the blistering heat of the Mesopotamian plain, the Parthians struck. Their cavalry swarmed the Roman formation, unleashing a relentless barrage of arrows. The Romans, formed in their traditional heavy infantry blocks, found themselves unable to close with the enemy or escape the arrow storm. Surena's forces employed a devastating tactic. Using camel trains to resupply their archers with arrows, they maintained a continuous, demoralizing rain of missiles that shattered Roman morale. As the day wore on, the Romans suffered horrific casualties. Crassus's son, Publius Licinius Crassus, leading the cavalry, was drawn into a trap and surrounded. Despite fighting bravely, he was overwhelmed and killed. His head was displayed by the Parthians to demoralize the Roman troops. The sight of Publius's severed head horrified Crassus and his men, but the Parthians were not finished. They used feigned retreats and hit-and-run attacks to exhaust the Roman forces. When night fell, Crassus attempted a retreat toward Carrhae, but his army was harried at every step. The following day, under pressure from his officers and desperate to negotiate, Crassus met with Surena under a flag of truce. Accounts differ on what happened next. Some say a scuffle broke out, others that the Parthians deliberately seized him. But in the end, Crassus was killed. Roman legend later claimed that molten gold was poured down his throat, a symbolic punishment for his greed. The Battle of Carrhae was one of Rome's most humiliating defeats. Out of roughly 40,000 men, only a fraction escaped. Many were killed, and thousands more were captured and sent to remote eastern frontiers of the Parthian Empire. The defeat not only ended Crassus's life, but also destabilized the fragile balance of the first triumvirate. With Crassus gone, the alliance between Caesar and Pompey unraveled, setting Rome on the path to another brutal civil war. Crassus's ambition for glory had led him to gamble Rome's soldiers on a campaign he did not need to fight, against an enemy whose strengths he underestimated. His death was a turning point in the late Republic, a stark reminder that wealth and political cunning could not substitute for sound military judgment. In the aftermath, Rome's eastern frontier remained tense for decades, and the Parthians emerged as a formidable rival whose power Rome would never fully break. Crassus's legacy is thus a cautionary tale, a man who had everything yet wanted more, whose reach for immortality in the annals of military history instead consigned him to a place among Rome's most tragic and avoidable disasters, remembered less for his victories than for the scorching sands and arrow storms of Carrhae, where ambition met